Welcome back to 360 Worldview. Tonight, protesters are back on the streets in Egypt, along with the riot police and accusations of a coup. The military council, which has been running the country since Mubarak's ouster last year, dissolved the first freely elected parliament just yesterday. The country's high court, packed with Mubarak-appointed judges, we should point out, threw out most of the laws that parliament has passed. Now, that cleared the way for Mubarak's former prime minister to run for president. And since the law that blocked former regime officials from running no longer exists. So that's a poster of the guy. His last name is Shafiq. Now, if you're wondering how all this is playing with the public, tomorrow's runoff election between Shafiq and the Muslim Brotherhood's candidate is going to bring a president to power without a constitution or a legislative body, which is a far cry from the goals of the so-called Arab Spring. Let's bring in senior international correspondent Ben Wedeman, who's in Cairo, and the New York Times' David Kirkpatrick, both in Cairo. Ben, the fact that Parliament has been dissolved, what exactly does that mean?
Well, really what it means is it's quite a body blow to the Muslim Brotherhood, which had almost 50% of the seats. The Brotherhood saw Parliament as its stronghold and was looking forward to possibly getting the presidency as well. Now it's lost that, and it's got no guarantee that it's going to lose the presidency. In addition to that, the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces has come out and said that they will handpick the 100 members of the Constituent Assembly that's going to write up the Constitution. That was a body that twice the Parliament tried to form but failed to reach a consensus on. So really the Brotherhood suddenly finds itself with a lot less cards to play in the political game. Now, the Brotherhood last night put out a statement calling for a 1 million-man march to the ballot boxes. So they really do see this election that begins tomorrow as a critical step to try to maintain their foothold in the power structure in Egypt. Anderson?
David, you wrote in the Times that there's grave doubt over what could happen next in Egypt, regardless of who wins the presidential election. I mean, regardless of who wins, is the military going to remain the real power?
Well, we always knew the military wasn't about to disappear. They've made it clear that they intend to have a major voice in their own affairs, probably including foreign policy as well as defense policy. And now it's more clear than ever that the following months and years are going to be a long, slow political struggle to try to wrest power from the old business and military elite. So it's not going to be a quick flip of the switch when we have a political transition at the end of this month. It's going to be a long slog.
And Ben, in terms of demonstrations, what's been a reaction since the parliament was disbanded?
Well, surprisingly muted, given the importance of this development. We were outside the Constitutional Court yesterday when the ruling was announced. There were only about 200 people there, and after a while, they said, let's all go to Tahrir Square to carry on this demonstration. And Tahrir Square, frankly, was fairly empty yesterday. There have been more demonstrations today, but nowhere near sort of the crowds of hundreds of thousands we've seen.
David, what do you think is going to happen at the ballot box this weekend?
And that's a very good question. I mean, what we've seen since Egypt started holding elections is that they have a tendency to sap some of the energy from the street protests, that people put their emotions into the ballot box instead of the streets, which is probably healthy from a democratic perspective. I would say that it's reasonable to suppose that in a free and fair vote, based on the results in the first round, Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood would have a commanding lead. Islamist candidates of one sort or another got nearly 50% of the vote in the first round. He just needs to pick off a few more of the anti-Mubarak voters, which shouldn't be hard. But at this point, after all these political decisions, there is a real haze of doubt over just how free and fair that vote is going to be.
And Ben, if Shafiq, who's considered a Mubarak ally, wins, where does that leave basically the Arab Spring protests? I mean, where does that leave all the work done during the Arab Spring protests?
Well, that's a good question. I think there still is a certain amount of energy left in the street, despite the sort of exhaustion of the last year and a half, and it really hinges on the Muslim Brotherhood. When the Muslim Brotherhood says we are going to fill Tahrir Square, they can do it, unlike the revolutionaries who have a lot of eloquence and imagination when it comes to protesting, but they simply don't have the numbers.
Ben Wedeman, appreciate it. David Kirkpatrick, appreciate it very much. Thanks. We'll see what happens.